I'm in Namibia for 12 days with just a car and no plan. Let's see what happens. Oops.
So with virtually zero knowledge of the country of Namibia, I reached out to this guy I'd met a couple months ago who had done a whole nature documentary here to see if he had any recommendations. And the first place he recommended was this national park in the north called Etosha. But the real unique aspect of this place is that you can do self-driven safaris in your own car as opposed to having a safari guide drive you around. So that's where I headed first.
You say you like the wind blowing through your hair. Come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. Texas sun. Say you wanna hit the highway for the engine roars. Come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. Texas sun, oh yeah. Texas sun, caressing you from Fort Worth to Amarillo. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun dips low. Texas sun. Texas sun, oh girl. Texas sun. When I'm far from home, and the cold winds blow.
I ended up spending about 2 days and 3 nights in Etosha. 2 of those nights were at a really cheap campsite just outside the park, and then 1 night I stayed inside the park at Camp Namutoni. If I were to go again, I'd be sure to spend a night at Camp Okukuyo in order to observe the major watering hole at sunset when a lot of animals like rhinos come to drink. However, with no clear idea of where I'd go next, I ran into 2 women from the States who recommended I visit a place west from Etosha called Spitzkope, a 2,000-foot tall granite formation in the Namib Desert that is home to cave paintings from around 4,000 years ago. So that's where I headed next. So when I woke up the morning before going to Spitzkope, I made some breakfast and headed to the restroom, where I was caught completely off guard by an ostrich. She eventually let me out, but took a particular interest in my car.
Okay. I also only realized on the last day of this trip that I never gave a tour of the completely decked out Toyota Land Cruiser that I was driving. Considering it's your accommodation and transportation, renting a car like this is a surprisingly affordable way to travel.
It's a Toyota Land Cruiser, 2019, budget option. Manual shift. It's the tented option, so it has this like rooftop tent. 2 gas tanks for the stove. On the back, got a tire jack, 2 spare tires, a shovel, and an axe, which have both come in handy on this trip. You'll probably see that in a little bit. We have a fridge that is now empty, and then a stove that pulls out. So yeah, the stove pulls out like this. So it's been a super sick car, super fun to drive. Definitely driven it maybe a little a little harder than I should have.
So the drive to Spitskope was only about 200 miles, but it took about 6 hours in total because the roads were almost entirely dirt or gravel and the speed limit is only about 50 miles an hour. However, it was pretty interesting to see how quickly the scenery changed from the lush greens like in Etosha to the more rusted oranges and browns of the desert.
That drive took 6 hours. I'm so glad we're here.
Only about half a mile to a mile from the entrance of Spitskope, I saw this car broken down on the side of the road and decided to pull over and help.
Just here helping this guy out. His friends seem to have kind of ditched him while he's here trying to figure out the car issue, so. The battery just died again. I think they need a new battery. So, take 2.
I ended up spending the next couple of days with them, and it turned out they were a group of friends, but also a documentary crew, filming a documentary about a Namibian artist named Shishani, who was with them as well. I think my favorite interaction with this group was when I initially asked, "Who's the artist?" I was promptly met with, "We're all artists." And this became quite clear through constant humming, singing, and guitar playing.
What chord is that?
Would never get tired of making kids, even if it was thoughtless.
The next day, we headed to a nearby rock pool that was filled with these little tadpoles.
Start writing children books.
We hung out for a bit and then explored the nearby granite formations and cave paintings.
And in the middle there's nothing. And the legs are like momentum left. Giraffe is one of the animals that's eating on top of the leaf. The same. Whether the men are hunting around, then the woman.
In the evening, I had the privilege of watching them film some content for their documentary. The director, Rosa, has a documentary on HBO called Master of Light that I'd highly recommend checking out.
Feels like an owl or something.
The next day, we parted ways. they went on with their trip, and I stayed one more day in Spitzkoppe to look for leopards without any luck.
Somewhere up there.
But I did find a pretty cool camping spot. That camping spot was a cave, and without a lighter, I was forced to use a torch in order to light a campfire that night.
Come on. I'm actually shocked that that worked. I think we're gonna go ahead and stick with the classic instant ramen. That's all I have left anyway, so. Ooh, it's hot.
The rain from the past couple of days and the flowing water in the cave meant most of the ground was pretty damp, but I was able to find a pretty dry section to put my sleeping pad on.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Tastes like instant ramen. This is the setup for tonight. Got the sleeping pad, the blanket, pillow. Nice warm fire. Looking pretty comfy to me. I'm not too worried about sleeping out here, kind of exposed, because there's no like lines in this area of Namibia. This definitely isn't the most settling place to sleep.
As I'm rambling about nothing here, you might be wondering why I'm sleeping on the ground when I have a perfectly good tent on top of my car. And honestly, I'm not sure either. I think I was just excited about the idea of it all.
Kind of obvious stuff, but
That night, I could hear bats constantly flying over my head, and this one rat kept on getting way too close for comfort, and I had to keep throwing rocks near it to keep it at bay. But for no particularly good reason, I stuck it out and eventually got a couple of hours of sleep.
all clean.
I decided to head to Walvis Bay next to see the famous mountain-like dunes that stand at the edge of the sea. Unfortunately, Namibia has the second highest income disparity in the world, and driving through this area, it became really noticeable. You drive through really nice neighborhoods with houses completely barricaded by walls or see mansions right on the water, and then 5 minutes later, you're driving past a shanty town constructed of tarps and corrugated metal. While I'm not nearly educated enough to give my opinion on Namibia's colonial or apartheid history, I can say from my experience there, it's clear that the scars from this era remain prominently. Efforts have been made to rectify the past, and after talking to quite a few people while I was there, it seems opinions vary greatly. Some believe the country should just move on. Others believe not enough has been done to make things right, and some believe the affirmative action measures have gone too far and are now making it unfair for the white minority in the country. Actions like the removal of statues that were erected to honor the German soldiers that died during the war with the native Nama and Herero peoples have caused some to see this as an attack on their ancestry and culture. despite the fact that in 2021, after 100 years of outcry, Germany officially and finally recognized this war as a genocide. They pledged 1.3 billion US dollars for development projects in Namibia and returned dozens of skulls and other human remains that were originally taken to be used for pseudoscientific racial experiments nearly a century earlier. As someone from the United States, I found it interesting that I've heard all of these arguments and viewpoints before, but when discussing things like the Confederate flags, Confederate statues, slavery, and Jim Crow in the US, while the exact numbers are contested, it's clear that despite making up only 6% of the country's population, whites claim ownership over a disproportionately large percentage of land. You see this when driving through the major cities that feel more like 1800s Germany as opposed to Southwest Africa, or the fact that it's almost impossible to find African food at restaurants as they primarily serve Western and European dishes. This was just my experience, but it seems strange at times to be in a restaurant full of locals in a country that is roughly 94% black or mixed race, but I was the only person of color there outside of the staff. This is my final point related to the topic, but especially in the more remote areas of Namibia, you will see mostly children on the side of the road with empty containers, begging not for money, but for water. This in particular created a sort of moral dissonance within me, as it felt wrong to be enjoying the privilege of travel as I watched someone's baby boy or girl desperate for the most basic sustenance there is. I began finding myself at the end of the day without any food or water because I had given it all away. When I would go into a town to restock, I'd buy gallons of extra water and food rations. And if you're traveling to Namibia, I'd urge you to consider doing the same. I don't say this to try and signal any sort of generosity or benevolence. I just couldn't drive past another child with an empty jug and do nothing. Anyways, my next stop was Dedvley, the only location in Namibia that I had known I wanted to visit even before coming to the country.
I might have dulled the blade a little bit. Doing some laundry. Alright, so I just made it to Dedvley. The sun's about to peek over this dune behind me in a second, and I think we're gonna get some really cool shots. So I'm super stoked to be here. I had to wake up and be at the front gate at 5:45, and then it was about like an hour drive from the front gate to here through some pretty deep sand. So that was an experience. But yeah, this place is so sick. Man, this place is just like magical. I feel like some of the pictures I've taken, I look back at them and I'm like, these just look photoshopped or AI generated. The dunes create super stark and contrasty shadows. It almost looks painted. This used to be a place where there was, you know, enough water for trees to grow, maybe a grassy sort of plain or whatnot. And then about 900 years ago, the water dried up and it's so dry that the trees can't decompose. So they become almost fossilized due to a lack of water. This place is, you know, somewhat like this in the world, but for the most part, there's nowhere else in the world like this. This feels like something from a movie or a book, some sort of off-world planet.
This has to be one of my favorite pictures from the entire trip because it's truly hard to understand the scale of the dunes in Deadley. But if you look at this picture and then zoom in to the top left corner, you can see there's a group of people scaling the dune and they look like ants up there. My final stop for this trip was the abandoned diamond mining town of Colemanskop in the southern region of the country. Like virtually every other stop on this trip, I learned about this place by talking to other tourists and locals, so I added it to the list.
That's pretty cool.
Just stopped here on top of the car. Hello. Ooh. This is very different terrain than I expected. It almost looks like what I would imagine the Grand Canyon's like, but I've never been to the Grand Canyon, so I don't really know. So cute. All right, so I was just driving along the road and I look off to the left and I see like a pretty gnarly corpse of an oryx. It still has, its two horns are still intact. And I was like, those horns are so sick. So I got out, I grabbed the axe and then I chopped one of the horns off. And I was thinking, I was like, maybe as like an intimidation factor, I can just like tie the horn to the front of the car here. Cause it's like, they'll probably think I like killed the oryx. So if I could like kill an oryx, I could like probably kill you, right? So don't rob me, dude. This thing's on there pretty. Honestly, I feel safer already. Oops. They cleaned my windshield for me. It's so deeper than I.
So basically what happened here is during this really long 6 or 8 hour drive, I began to get bored and wanted to see how this sick Land Cruiser would fare in some mud. And I completely misjudged how deep the mud was and immediately got stuck. But thankfully there were some farmers nearby that were repairing a fence and heard the revving of my engine as I was desperately trying to get out. They brought over their tractor, pulled me out, wiped off my windshield, and completely saved me. So in return, I gave them some food, water, and all the cash I had on hand. Coleman's Cop opened in 1908 to support the German diamond mining operations during its peak in Namibia. The town had a school, hospital, movie theaters, bowling alleys, even the first X-ray machine in the Southern Hemisphere. Of course, it was used to make sure workers didn't smuggle diamonds out. Namibia was so rich in diamonds, some reports say you could walk across the dunes and simply pick them up off the ground. But as the supply dried up in the 1950s, the town was abandoned and has been left alone for the desert to reclaim ever since. When taking photographs of this place, it's interesting to see how much the lighting and time of day can change the mood. For example, looking at this picture, it has this beautiful orange glow and light rays coming across the frame. But 4 minutes later, I took the exact same picture in the exact same spot, and the vibe is completely different.
So sometimes for whatever reason, whether or not the door is boarded up or filled with sand, in order to get to some of these rooms, you have to kind of like climb through the windows. So all right, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. Back at the car now, and this trip is pretty much over. All that's left is to get back to the US. So I have like an 8-hour drive back to the capital, and then I have to fly back to Tanzania, so that's 12 hours, and then like a 26-hour flight from Tanzania back home to San Francisco, USA. All right, see you in the next one.